Hi, I'm Elle Powell, and this is an explainer video about the recent art commission I did with the City of Lakewood and 40 West Arts. A little bit about the project. The team was looking for an illustrated map that would be part wayfinding tool and part art piece in and of itself. That would encapsulate this area of the 40 West Arts District and the art line. The art line is a super cool free art walk with tons of different pieces along it. It has ground murals, wall murals, sculptures, installation pieces in the parks. So it's a really cool free experience. You can walk down a skateboard, bike, and it's a loop, so you don't have to worry about where you start or end. And there's lots to see along the way, and you don't have to worry about getting lost either because there's a green line that you can follow the whole way. So it's a very cool, very unique feature of the city of Lakewood, so I highly recommend everybody visits it who can. But yeah, so this is a really fun project where I got to make art that was promoting other artists' work and promoting experiencing artwork outdoors, promoting small businesses in the area. So I was very drawn to this project for those reasons, and also because I love the idea of illustration as something that can communicate complex information in a really concise way. So I was very excited to be selected as the illustrator for this project, and yeah, I'm going to walk you through the process. So this video is for certainly illustrators, designers, people who are art appreciators, people who are interested in this area of the city, or for just anybody who's curious to learn a little bit more about something new. So let's dive in. So the first thing that I did to get started was a bunch of research. So I looked at the 40 West Art Line website quite a bit. I looked at all of the beautiful photos that they have of every single art piece in depth, and some photos of their events. I watched all the videos I could find from previous events and First Fridays and things like that. I also, of course, went to the art line and experienced it for myself, walked around. Of course, it was a different vibe in the winter and COVID, but it's still so fun and so much cool stuff to see. So took some of my own photos for reference as well. So then I had a meeting with the team, and we sort of established a few directions we could go from there. I did create mood boards as well. So these ones were very preliminary, but they're a good way to sort of break the ice with a project, if you will. So just trying on some different ideas, looking at different aesthetics, thinking about the mood and the color and things like that. So here were three mood boards that I created. This one was a bit more minimal, less of a background, and more of solid colors on top. This one had a little bit more of like a vintage feel because, of course, Colfax has such a long and interesting history, so much cool signage and different businesses over the decades. So that one had a little bit more of like a stylish vintage inspired feel. And then this one was a much more sort of refreshing, airy, joyful feel, focusing much more on blue and green and nature. Because even though you're in the city of Lakewood, there's 3 big parks that are part of the art walk, and Colorado is very much known for the sunshine. So that was a third idea. But it wasn't time for color yet. The next step was sketches. So I like to do a couple sketches for clients so that they have a choice. And because the team had let me know that this was going to be a wayfinding tool, but also an art piece in itself, and it didn't need to be as strict of a map since they already had a really nice map that was clear and easy to understand to begin with. This one. I thought I would play around a little bit with the map making, do something, more whimsical and fun. So here was sketch number 1. As you can see, there's a lot of curved lines and energy and playing with scale. So that was one idea. And so all of the sketches have some of the same features, some of the major landmarks along the art line, the parks, of course, Rocky Mountain College Art and Design, Casa Bonita, the light rail. Of course, each one would have a map title, and I really wanted to include people in the piece because I think that people give any piece, but especially a map, a certain liveliness and energy. So that was sketch number 1, and just had the spinning wheel of death. Here was sketch number 2, and if you've seen the preview of the final illustration, you'll know that this was the one that they chose, and I was really glad that they chose this one because this was my my favorite sketch as well. It is, I guess, the most grounded in traditional map making and correct proportions with the map that they had already produced. But it has a lot more detail and yeah, whimsy and fun and more life to it. And there's still the element of playing with scale and stylized icons and things like that. Here was the third sketch that I did, and this was yeah, just kind of pushing the boundaries of what could be considered a map. It's somewhere in between a map and a scene, but it still has all those landmarks that we had discussed that should be on the map. So moving on, so once they had chosen this sketch, we moved into some rounds with more detailed, specific edits. So adding things, taking things away, playing with scale. They liked that in some of my other sketches I had the mountains on the left and the Denver skyline on the right, referencing, you know, what else is out there. And also, when you're on the outline, there are places where you have some nice mountain views and some nice downtown Denver views. So that was nice to put in the map, and then we put in Sloan's Lake as well in the upper right because it's really close by as well. Here was the next round of edits. And so it was also important to make sure that the logos that needed to be placed on the map had good placement. So that's the 40 West Arts logo, the Artline logo, and then the Colorado Tourism Office logo. So they needed to be in the map as well. So from this stage, I took it to vector. And so for those who don't know, this is a really important stage because the final file needed to be a vector. And the reason it needed to be a vector file instead of a raster file, or in other words, working in Adobe Illustrator versus Photoshop, although you can do vector graphics in Photoshop as well, was so that it could be scaled to infinite proportions. So this can be scaled up to be an electric box wrap, it could be a large sign, it could be a big poster, it could also be something smaller, a Facebook banner or something on a t-shirt or a tote bag. So at the beginning of the project we weren't sure what the use cases exactly would be, so it was really important to do something that would look good small, look good big, have enough detail, but not too small so you couldn't see it, and then yeah, just in terms of the file type, vectors can be scaled to any size. So that's why it was important to take the vector from this to this. It's also, of course, much cleaner and more precise and more consistent line weights and things like that. And this is also the file type that it needed to be in to apply color to it. So then the final round of edits was this. This was the result, and so that last change was basically moving the logos to outside the, I guess, strict borders of the map. So they have their own little area down there. And you'll see this on the time lapse if you watch that as well. But so all of the lettering on this map is hand lettered by me. I did want it to be nice and neat, of course. Being legible is extremely important on a wayfinding tool such as a map. But I also wanted it to still have that kind of handmade, sort of artisanal, non-computerized feeling. So I did hand lettering, and then I tweaked some of the curves and things like that using the tools in Adobe Illustrator. And then at this point, we knew that, of course, the art line was going to be represented in that on-brand kind of lime green color. And other than that, the map was pretty wide open color-wise. We had discussed that everybody liked the sort of a natural feel, so greens, browns, some blue, things like that. Happy colors, certainly, in line with the palette of my previous work. So, so that's where I went with color. But before I show you the color comps that I did, I'll just point out one tool that I like, which is Adobe Color. Adobe Color allows you to put in a color scheme like this and get confirmation that it's colorblind safe, and also to see what those colors would look like with various colorblindness conditions. So you can see how it would look to different people, which is very cool. And so I did this colorblind simulator with all the color schemes that I tried. Yeah, so here we go. This is the first color comp. So this is obviously pretty saturated, pretty bold blue. I thought I'd try out yellow for the park so that the green would pop a little bit more. But so the deal with color comps is basically that you save a lot of time not filling in every single detail, because this piece has many components to it, a lot of fine details, so applying color takes quite a while. So the color comps are a good way to communicate the color scheme and sort of the overall mood without spending all that time on every single detail that is likely to be changed later. So that was the first color comp I presented. This was the second color comp I presented. And then from here, the team requested that we go a little bit lighter, a little bit airier, a lighter background and darker foreground objects, or at least darker focal point foreground objects. So this was the next version, and this was, as you can see, no longer really a color comp. This was, at that point I knew what they were looking for a lot more, and so I was able to go ahead and do the full detailed color. And so you can see even on the tiny little details, every single thing was colored at that point. And so this gave the team a chance to say more specifically what colors they would like changed, if any. And this was pretty close to final for us, so there weren't a ton of changes at this point. This is the final illustration. So as you can see, some things got lightened, some things got darkened. You know, for example, Sloan's Lake and downtown, they're not really focal points of the art line itself, although they are great places. So by lightening those values, we kind of kept the focus on the parks and the art line and the title of the map, lightened this building as well and things like that. So yeah, so the color is working a little bit more for where the eye should be going and spending more time in the piece. And at this point, I'll also mention some fun little things that I did with the piece. For one, I really liked the idea of having some element of interaction, which can be a little bit tough with a static illustration. But one challenge that we came across was that the art line is ever developing. So it's kind of a living, breathing art walk where, you know, the elements affect the look of the murals, and new murals might get added, new sculptures might get added, things change a lot, businesses change along it. So we wanted to be not too specific. We also wanted to honor a lot of the artwork that is there, but we knew that we wouldn't really have enough space, or just with the ever-changing nature, that it would be hard to be 100% accurate with the art that is there and with the art that will be there in the future. So the fun that I had with making it a little bit interactive and kind of addressing that challenge was to incorporate some subtler nods to a lot of the art pieces within this piece. So some of the pieces have a direct representation. For example, this is the connected sculpture in that roundabout there, which is really cool. And then we've got the big park installations you can see. but then there's a lot of murals as well. And so I referenced some of those by putting them on people's clothing. So if you go to the 40 West Art Line website, you can look up what they correspond with, or if you go to the art walk, you might be able to say, oh, like there's that mural that was on that shirt, or oh, I recognize that. So it's a little bit of a fun game to see what you can find in the map and in real life and how they correspond. So it can be a little treasure hunt. What else? Oh yeah, and so we also incorporated a few real people from the community, which was a lot of fun. People who have been really big supporters of the art line, who have volunteered a lot of their time and just been really great advocates for it. So we wanted to honor them with map placement as well. And yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of detail I could get into as you zoom in. One funny thing about this process was I would find myself working for a long time. Oh, this is a lower res version for the sake of this video, but yeah, I could find myself, working on this tiny little foot, really zoomed in, and then I would zoom out and realize not sure anybody is going to notice that little detail, but it's fun. I really loved working on this piece, and so I would find myself getting super immersed in the tiny little details and, the little windows and textures. It's a really, really fun project. And so, yeah, the last thing I will say is just that if you're interested in seeing your piece in different color schemes for how it would look with people with different vision, you can use some simulators online. So as sort of one final test, even if you verified that that is a colorblind safe palette, you can see how your contrast is working and how the colors shift. For people with different vision, and you can see how the values are working together as well and tweak as needed if needed. Although at that point I was pretty happy with it, and yeah, the whole thing is pretty much flat vector. I did add some textures or patterns to represent texture in some of the plants. Oh yes, I did a sneaky signature in here as well on this this bicyclist jersey. You can see the parks have some pattern to represent texture as well, and then this was actually the parks, and then some of the leaves over here were watercolor textures that I had done and then vectorized. But other than that, it was all done in Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, so I think that about does it on the process for this piece. But if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment or direct message me, send me an email. Happy to talk more about it, and I hope that you will go and check out the art line. It's a really cool thing in the city of Lakewood, Colorado, and yeah, it was such a great team to work with. It was a great project, and yeah, I hope you'll get to enjoy it soon.